The visitor at sunset. Jonas Merrow was no stranger to odd things. Weathered hands knew the feel of sick soil and the scent of a coming frost long before the sky ever turned. But when the stranger showed up just as the sun dipped behind the cedar ridge, asking politely for leftover pork, even he had to admit, that was new. She didn't knock, just stood by the fence, hood up, hands folded in front of her, waiting as though she belonged there. Jonas spotted her from the porch, where he was nursing a mug of chicory tea and watching the smoke twist from his wood oven. He didn't own a gun. He did own a quiet patience and a memory like cured oak. "You lost?" he called, not unkindly. "No," she replied. "Only hungry." The woman's voice was soft, but something in it struck him, like it echoed from somewhere deeper than the throat. She pointed toward the smokehouse. "Do you have leftover pork? Bone, gristle, anything unwanted. I could trade." Jonas rose slowly, setting the mug down. She was wrapped in layers too heavy for the season. One gloved hand lifted slightly, palm open. No weapon. "You don't look like someone who eats scraps." "I'm not," she said, "but I'm not here for me." He studied her a moment longer. Then he nodded, walked into the smokehouse, and returned with a sack of thick rinds, half-charred edges, and some bone bits from the last curing. "Here," he said, holding it out. "Nothing fancy, but it'll feed whatever's got your sympathy." She stepped forward, and, as the sack changed hands, he noticed something. Her fingers were gloved, but not fully. The tips were bare and covered in faint, iridescent scales. Their eyes met. Hers were a deep amber, the kind that didn't reflect sunlight but seemed to drink it in. "Thank you," she said. "You're not from the village." "No," she replied. "I'm only passing through." Then she turned and walked away, back toward the forest's edge, leaving no tracks despite the muddy path. The next day, Jonas found himself checking the trail by instinct. And sure enough, just before dusk, she came again. Said nothing this time, just stood by the fence. "I saved the better cut," Jonas said before she asked. "Didn't know if your friend liked marrow." "He does," she said. "He needs the strength." This time, she took the sack with both hands and bowed her head. "Don't get many dragons out this way," Jonas said quietly. She froze. Then slowly, she looked up. "You saw. Scales. Only a bit." He leaned against the porch post. "Not a common sickness, that. I didn't mean to draw attention." "I'll go." Jonas raised a hand. "Didn't say I'd stop you. But I can't help wondering why a dragon's scrounging scraps from an old farmer." She hesitated. "Because we're hiding. Because we're hunted. And because pride doesn't feed the dying." Jonas exhaled through his nose. "You've got someone sick." She nodded once. "You should have left it there. Should have let her vanish again, a footnote in his quiet life." But something about her, about the way her voice carried sorrow like it was ancient, stayed his tongue. "Wait," he said as she turned. "Where do you go after this?" "Home," she said. "For now." He watched her vanish into the trees again, the forest swallowing her like water over a stone. But this time, he didn't return to his porch. He stood at the edge of the clearing, heart beating faster than it should. Jonas Merrow didn't believe in getting tangled in trouble that wore a pretty face or scales. But he did believe in seeing things through. And that Dragoness wasn't just a mystery. She was a story walking on 2 feet. So the next evening, when she returned for more pork, he waited until she disappeared into the trees. And then he followed her, quiet as he could. Because if a Dragoness was begging for scraps, something was very wrong. And Jonas intended to find out what. Into the glade of secrets. Jonas followed her at a distance, careful not to break branches or rustle leaves. The forest behind his farm was old, older than the village, older than maps. Trees nodded like old hands, roots thick enough to trip the wind. But he moved like someone used to waiting for things to grow, and that kind of patience lent itself to stealth. The Dragoness, to Syrianth, as he'd later learn, walked without turning back. She moved smoothly, each step purposeful, as if she knew where every shadow would fall before it did. She didn't glow, didn't shimmer, didn't breathe fire. She just was utterly present in a way that made Jonas feel like a trespasser in his own land. After 20 minutes of weaving through the woods, she reached a clearing he'd never seen before, even after living near these woods his whole life. The glade was quiet, not the hush of evening birds or lazy crickets, but a deeper silence, the kind that hung in ruins or over graves. Jonas crouched behind a log, watching as she shed her cloak. What he saw stole the breath from his chest. She changed, not dramatically, not in a swirl of flame, but as if her form had simply relaxed. Her skin shimmered, the illusion falling away like dust shaken from cloth. Her human shape lengthened, widened, wings unfurling, tail curling low, horns glinting faintly in the starlight. She was magnificent and wounded. Scales along her flank were dulled, scarred, and a long tear along her left wing had been hastily stitched. But even like this, she radiated quiet strength. She was beautiful, not in the way of stories or songs, but in the way of mountains and deep rivers. Real, heavy with memory. She bent over something low and still in the center of the clearing. Jonas leaned closer and saw what she was tending. A larger dragon, male. His body lay half-buried in ferns, encased in a translucent stasis field that flickered now and then with failing energy. His breathing was shallow. Pale mist escaped his nostrils, carrying the scent of burning cedar. Beside him, 3 eggs, cracked but intact, each pulsed faintly with light. Jonas's hand clenched around a branch. He hadn't meant to intrude. This was no thief stealing pork. This was a mother, guarding her wounded mate and unborn young. He stepped back and snapped a twig. The sound cracked through the glade like a gunshot. Tsiriantha's head whipped around. Her eyes, golden and slit-pupiled, locked onto the underbrush. Before he could move, she was on him, human-shaped again, but clearly not human. She pinned him with unnatural speed, claws at his throat, her breath hot and tinged with copper. "You followed me," she hissed. Jonas raised both hands slowly. "Not to hurt you, just needed to understand. You saw too much. Didn't plan to. You asked for pork. That's all it took." Her expression shifted. Confusion, pain, weariness. "You're not afraid?" "Terrified," he said honestly. "But I reckon fear and respect ain't the same thing." She blinked. Then slowly, she eased back. "Why follow me?" Jonas sat up, brushing dirt from his coat. "Because something about you didn't sit right. Not in a bad way. Just like you were carrying something too big for one person." "I am," she said, "and I have no right to burden you with it." "Too late for that," Jonas said. He glanced toward the glade. "That your mate?" She nodded. "He was gravely injured escaping the consortium scouts. I've barely got him into stasis. The field is failing. If it drops before he heals, he'll die. And the eggs." "My clutch," she said, almost a whisper. "They should not be born here. Not on a world so primitive." Jonas rubbed the back of his neck. "We're primitive, all right. But we got pigs. And shelter. And I know a thing or two about keeping things alive that ain't supposed to survive." Tsirianth stared at him. He met her gaze without flinching. "I don't have a spaceship," he said, "but I do have a shed, a root cellar, and some stubborn ideas about helping folks who ask nicely." For a long time, she said nothing. Then, to his surprise, she laughed, a low, rough sound like river stones shifting. "Very well, Jonas Merrow. If you wish to help, follow me." And just like that, a human farmer stepped willingly into the secret world of dragons. Smoke, steel, and starlight. The eggs were warm. That was the first thing Jonas noticed when he touched the smooth, scaled surface of the largest one. Not hot like a stove, but warm like a living thing, like something that wanted to live. "They're close," Tsirianth said. She was crouched beside her mate, her hand pressed to the flickering stasis field. Another few days, perhaps less. Jonas knelt beside her, eyes tracing the dim pulse of the failing energy net. "This thing's barely holding. You said it was powered by crystal, not one your world has." Her voice was tight. "I've drained mine dry. Without power, the field collapses." Jonas frowned. "No way to repair it?" "Not with what I have." He stood and looked around the glade. His mind wasn't trained in alien tech or galactic medicine, but he was a farmer. Farmers made things work with spit and stubbornness. He squinted at the domed structure, The control nodes, the shivering glow. A thought began to form. I might be able to jury-rig something, he said. Convert some stored solar. I've got old panels and an inverter in a barn. Might just buy us some time. You would risk that? Tesserianth asked, skeptical. I'd risk a lot for the lives of things trying to be born. She blinked at him, then nodded once. Then we worked quickly. Back at the farm, Jonas dug through his storage shed like a badger. Tesserianth waited at the tree lean in her cloaked form, watching the skies. He emerged with coils of copper wire, a battery array, and a rust-speckled solar converter that hadn't been used since the last grid outage 5 years ago. They worked together in the glade for hours. Jonas adapted the battery hookup, attaching the inverter to the base of the alien stasis field. Sparks jumped. The field surged, then steadied, glowing a little brighter. Not permanent, Jonas muttered, but it'll hold a bit longer. Tesserianth studied the device. Crude, but effective. He chuckled. That's a fair description of me, too. The next evening, as they were tending to the wounded drake, his breathing a touch stronger now, something shifted in the forest. A silence. Not natural, not like the glade. This was a watching silence. Tesserianth stiffened. Then, a soft metallic hum. Jonas turned. Above the trees, something descended, round, silver, with smooth curves and a quiet menace. A drone, unlike anything human-made. Its core pulsed blue. Consortium, she whispered. The drone hovered just above the treetops, scanning. They found me. Jonas stepped in front of her. What are you doing? She hissed. Thinking like a farmer, he said. He pointed to a nearby slope that overlooked the field. I'll draw it. You get to the eggs. If it gets close, burn it. She hesitated, then nodded. Jonas ran. He scrambled up the slope and pulled out an old mirror plate he used to blind hawks from his chicken coops. He flashed it into the canopy, then tossed it away. Then another, and another, each with a glint and a heat signature taped to the back. Pork fat smeared on foil and heated with a hand warmer. The drone darted toward the flashes, confused. Jonas lit a flare. The drone turned toward him, scanners adjusting. Just before it locked on, Tesserianth roared. A stream of blue flame, pure plasma, tore through the glade and engulfed the drone. It exploded in silence, a burst of light that rippled the trees. Ash rained softly to the forest floor. Later, they stood together in the clearing. The air was still warm from the fire. You could have died, Tesserianth said. I've nearly died feeding pigs, Jonas replied. This felt cleaner. She looked at him strangely, as if seeing him for the first time. You fought a hunter drone with bacon grease and mirrors. Jonas grinned. They don't teach that in your empire? She almost smiled. No, they don't. He knelt by the drake, whose breathing had steadied. What happens when the others find out where you are? They won't, she said, quieter now. That drone came alone. A scout. It didn't transmit before it fell. We're safe. For now. Jonas nodded. Then we keep working. He placed his hand on one of the eggs. Tesserianth watched him. You're different from what we were told of humans. You've met others? Not many, but enough to believe you were inconsequential. He snorted. I've been called worse. She tilted her head. You may not be what they expected, but you are exactly what we need. And for the first time, Jonas felt something deep stir in his bones. An old instinct, maybe older than man. Something was coming, and somehow he was part of it. When the sky broke open. The third night after the drone's destruction, Jonas awoke to thunder, but the sky was clear. No clouds, no lightning. Just a deep, resonating sound that shook the windows and rattled the jars on his pantry shelf. He rolled out of bed, grabbing his coat and boots. From the porch, he saw the source. Not thunder at all, but engines. Massive ones. A distant, glowing shape descending beyond the forest line. Far too large to be human. The consortium had come. He ran, branches toward his arms as he sprinted through the woods toward the glade, breath burning in his chest. The Dragoness was already there, standing tall in her full form, wings outstretched, tail sweeping slowly in the dirt. The wounded drake had been moved, now resting behind a protective ridge of rock and root. The eggs were clustered at Tesserianth's feet. They're here, she said without turning. I saw. Jonas replied, panting. You were right. That drone must have sent something after all. Tesserianth's voice was hard. They brought a collector ship, not just to find us, to capture. The trees at the edge of the glade groaned as the ship pushed its bulk into the atmosphere overhead. It hovered just above the canopy, sleek, dark, and utterly silent now. A ship built to take what it wanted. From its underside, figures descended. Armored soldiers, tall and featureless, exosuits gleaming like wet stone. Jonas counted 5, then 10. They spread out, forming a perimeter. We can't win a fight, he whispered. Tesserianth growled low in her throat. Then we don't fight to win. We fight to protect. She pressed her palm to the largest egg. It glowed in response, brighter than before. They're hatching, she said. Too soon. But they're coming. Jonas swallowed. How much time do you need? She looked at him. 5 minutes. He nodded. Buy you 10. Then he turned, darted into the trees, and raised every old trap and diversion he'd ever set for foxes, coyotes, or wild dogs. Pits, tripwires, branches rigged to fall. Anything to slow the advance. He even lit the edge of the forest with the last of his flare sticks and diesel, creating a ring of flickering flame that startled the soldiers into caution. And it worked. For a while. Tesserianth stayed by the eggs, her body shielding them from view. The soldiers advanced, slow but inevitable. The drake stirred behind her, eyes opening for the first time. His voice was a whisper, deep and broken. Let me rise. You can't, she said, tears forming. I must, he replied. Our children need to live. He stood, not fully, not strong, but with just enough force to drag himself beside her. Together, they faced the line of armored invaders. The first soldier raised a weapon. Jonas burst from the tree lean, hurling a heavy iron spike, a piece of broken harrow, into its visor. It staggered. That was all Tesserianth needed. She roared. Not fire, but sound, ancient and layered with command. A dragon's roar not meant for prey or battle, but for claiming. The soldiers froze. Some dropped to their knees. One fled into the trees. The drake followed with a stream of cold flame, blue and white, pure energy. It swept the front line clean. Jonas dove for cover as something exploded behind him. Bark and soil showered down. And then, behind them, soft cracking. The eggs. The first one split. A small head poked through, slick with translucent fluid and crowned with tiny horns. Its eyes were golden. It blinked once, and then gave a high, sharp cry. The second egg followed. Then the third. 3 dragonlings now curled in the grass, weak but breathing. Alive. The battle paused. Tesserianth stepped between her children and the last remaining soldier, who had not moved. She extended her wings fully, lifting her chin. We are not prey, she said in their tongue. And we are not alone. The soldier dropped its weapon. The ship above began to rise, silently, slowly. A decision made. They would not win this fight. Not today. Not with witnesses. Not with the scent of resistance in the air. The ship vanished into the stars. Later, as dawn rose over the scorched glade, Jonas sat beside the drake, now resting with his eyes closed but smiling faintly. The dragonlings slept in a nest of moss in Jonas's spare coat. You saved them, Tesserianth said softly. I just showed up, he replied. You did the rest. She sat beside him. You could have walked away. I don't walk away from things trying to be born, he said again, and this time he meant more than just dragons. Tesserianth looked at him, really looked. We will remember you, Jonas Merrow. He smiled. Then make sure they grow up with stories. Of dragons, of farmers,